China has entered the war on the side of Russia. Just recently, the Supreme Commander-in-Chief, President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky, shared information that the armed forces of Ukraine captured 2 citizens of the People's Republic of China in Donetsk region during battles. There are discovered facts, documents, bank cards, and accordingly the language they communicate in fact, it can now be stated that this is a fact that has already been recorded, will be documented, and passed on to our partners for review. This is an important moment. Secondly, as noted by the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, he mentioned that there are documents, personal data, we have information that there are significantly more Chinese citizens in the occupiers' units than just 2. We are currently clarifying all the facts with intelligence, the Security Service of Ukraine, and the relevant units of the Armed Forces of Ukraine working on it. Assignment: the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine has been instructed to immediately contact Beijing and find out how China intends to respond. Well, these are the facts we have as of today. In fact, if there are more of these citizens, it is now necessary to determine whether this is a deliberate policy of China or just some Chinese workers who decided to join the Russian army to earn money in this way. This is what needs to be figured out now. And in general, how will China react to this? Will it disassociate itself? Beijing might say that this is a mistake and there were no Chinese citizens, supposedly, and they don't care about those who were captured there. Or will they actively get involved and acknowledge the fact that these are citizens, possibly indicating the reason why this happened? Well, it happened, and that's that. Some Chinese were living in Russia, decided to fight due to various motivations and reasons, and joined the Russian army, thus ending up in the occupied part of Ukraine. Well, and they are engaged in combat. So it's essentially one of 2 things. Right now, it's very important to wait for the reaction, because if these are certain systematic actions, obviously they will never be directly demonstrated by China. It's unlikely that China will act like North Korea does. Is this Kim or Nin without breaks? And in principle, they have established a strategic partnership, with Russia, and effectively supported Russian aggression against Ukraine, publicly, legally, which gives reason to believe that North Korea is waging war against Ukraine by sending its troops and providing weapons. Including North Korean weapons have been recorded in the occupied part of Ukraine's territory, along with North Korean military personnel. Workers from North Korea are being involved in work on the occupied territories, and so on. Accordingly, by the way, interestingly, does it take into account the fact that someday something like deep strikes might reach Pyongyang? Well, that's a rhetorical question, actually. Returning to the topic of China. So, in general, it's necessary to analyze the military support specifically. I'm not considering political support right now. It's obvious that Russia has this support from China. China does not vote in favor. In the UN General Assembly resolutions, now during the UN Security Council, it votes against or abstains from any documents that condemn Russian aggression, but at the same time they note they support Ukraine's territorial integrity and oppose interference in sovereignties, the internal affairs of the state. Such a position is, well, not entirely consistent. Additionally, I want to remind that China not long ago promoted initiatives for peaceful resolution. Initially, it was a 12-point plan that included a ceasefire and other concessions from Ukraine. Then this plan was reduced to 6 points, and it became a Chinese-Brazilian plan. The special representative of China on the issues of the Russian-Ukrainian war, Li Hui, even traveled to BRICS countries, and he stated that many countries are eager to actually support this Chinese-Brazilian initiative for a peaceful resolution in the Russian-Ukrainian war. But something didn't work out because, as is known, this plan is not being heard about now, nor is China's position. The same goes for this document directly, which remains unknown to us. So, this is the situation, and it's clear that there is political support. But what about military support? especially during the time of Russia's full-scale invasion. And here the following should be noted. China indeed plays a significant role. Here is what China supplies or is likely supplying now, according to investigations by international media, as reported in the media, which are essentially from sources. In political circles and the intelligence community of various countries around the world, we will now analyze with you. So, Chinese companies supply Russia with navigation equipment, jamming technologies, fighter jet parts, and nitrocellulose. This is one of the key chemical elements necessary for the production of gunpowder, which is used in various explosives, ranging from shells to other explosive substances. For example, Polytechnologies sent enough gunpowder for 80 million rounds, and Nornico in 2023 supplied assault rifles, drone parts, and bulletproof vests. Drones are also a separate category, with components being supplied, and now Russia is also heavily investing in drones of various types, including those with fiber optics. Accordingly, we see that China's role in this can also be significant. By the beginning of 2024, Russia launched a drone production program in China, specifically the IMZ Dome, producing Harpy 3 drones with Chinese engines. In December 2024, China's export restrictions on drone components affected Ukraine's efforts, indicating indirect support to Russia. In September 2024, American intelligence claimed that Chinese materials were directly used for the Russian war machine, although China denied this, as noted by Wang and the Chinese foreign minister in 2024. In July 2024, NATO called China a decisive enabler of the war due to its support of the Russian defense industry. Furthermore, economic cooperation between China and Russia has increased. China is a key buyer of Russian oil and gas, and accordingly, it sponsors the Kremlin and enables the continuation of aggression against Ukraine. In fact, it acts as one of the main sponsors of this war against Ukraine, the largest war in Europe since the end of World War II. And China's role in this is also significant. In fact, in 2023, the trade volume between the two countries increased to reach $240 billion. Financial cooperation notably encompasses the use of the yuan, with its share in trade transactions significantly rising from 3 to 33%. Chinese state media amplify pro-Kremlin narratives, avoiding terms like invasion, reinforcing anti-American sentiments, and generally do not acknowledge the Russian aggression, the Russian war against Ukraine, as aggression. Instead, they continue to modestly refer to it as the Ukrainian crisis. But this also speaks to the political assessment, diplomatically, which all comes from the side of China. I also want to remind that Russia was very actively spreading information. They disseminated data in their media and were pleased, because Xi Jinping, the Chinese leader, is planning to visit Putin at the mausoleum for the parade in Moscow on May 9th. This is also something that is given, and it also speaks to the political and symbolic support from Beijing to Moscow, which we are currently observing. So, we have a situation where it can already be discussed, not about indirect intervention and support of Russian aggression in Ukraine through fueling the economy at political, diplomatic levels, economic cooperation, but it can already be about direct intervention. And of course, it will be interesting to hear the position of China and, by the way, the USA, America, because the USA, in doctrinal documents, especially now in the position of US President Donald Trump, it is often mentioned that China is essentially a likely, probable adversary for the USA, not posing challenges, threats, and dangers. So it is very interesting to hear the opinion of our partners now, what they will say about this, because the war is moving to yet another or new stage. Friends, subscribe to my channel, give this video a like, and be sure to write what you think about China's involvement in this war. Take care of yourselves and glory to Ukraine.